Welcome back. It's back to the basics. I'm Sean Barr, and we are talking about IP addressing. That's subnet masks and IP addresses and default gateways. What? Let's go! All right, welcome back. We are talking IP addressing. And so there's a couple things that make up IP addressing. There is a default gateway, a subnet mask, and an IP address. So before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about classes. So there's actually five types of classes, but three common ones: Class A, Class B, Class C. And those are based on basically the first set of numbers in the IP address. Designate, is it a Class A, a Class B, a Class C? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a different video, but just know that exists. There's a class system that's called classful versus classless. So now as we get into IP addressing, there's those three pieces of information: the IP address, the subnet mask, and the default gateway. They all work together to allow a host to communicate on a network. Without getting too technical on it, let's start with a host IP address of 192.168.1.5. So that's a host address. And I chose 192.168 because it sits in the RFC 1918 space. What is RFC 1918? Well, it's a designation that says these addresses are not routable on the internet. And that is why 10 address space, 192.168 address space, 172.16 type space is not routable on the internet, and that is why it's commonly used internally on private networks, corporate networks, home networks. That's why it's used there. So back to the IP address example, 192.168.1.5. So that's a host address. Then it takes its subnet mask to figure out what part of the network address defines the network that I'm on, and what side of the address defines the host. So the analogy here is if you're on a street. My street is Sean Lane. I can only talk to those people that are on my street without using a gateway or a main road. And so the host designation would be like the housing number. So I'm 123. That means that the only person on that street, on Sean Lane, that can have 123 is me, because we can't have two houses on the same lot. So back to the example. So we have 192.168.1.5, and we have a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. That mask is saying everything that I mask, 255, means any number from 0 to 255 is network. So 192.168.1, that defines the network. Or in IP addressing terms, or not in IP addressing terms, but street terms, that is the street name. That's the way machines know who can I yell for. And so I can yell for anybody that has a 192.168.1.something address. And I yell on that segment, that network segment. And so my IP address, my host address is .5. So I can talk to anybody on 192.168.1.1 through 254. Now, why did I not say 255? Well, 255 is the broadcast address, and so if I use that address, every host is going to hear my yelling. So it's kind of directed communication or broadcast communication. So that's the broadcast address. So we talked a little bit about the IP address. We talked about how the subnet mask defines network versus host portion. Now we're going to talk about when do I use a default gateway. If I'm a host on a network and I get an address, a destination address of 4.2.2.1, that's not on my network. So I need to go somewhere else. I need to go to a main road to get to the freeway that takes me to wherever I'm going. So the main road is the default gateway. So I'm going to send that traffic destined to my default gateway, and my default gateway should know how to get to that destination. And so that, in general, is IP addressing. We didn't cover subnet masking and how it all works from a binary perspective. That's kind of a pretty deep discussion. There's tons of content around subnetting and IP addressing, And we could do a video if you want us to. Let us know. If I said anything in this video that you would love to know more about, maybe it's subnet masking. Maybe I got to get on the whiteboard and draw some ones and zeros. Let us know. Leave a comment, like, subscribe. Thank you for watching. We will see you on the next one. Adios!